Good afternoon. Yeah, I want to thank God for giving us another beautiful day. And this afternoon, we want to start with this topic: why country living? Why country living? During the days of our parents and even the days of our grandparents, almost everybody was trying, to find a way to go to the city. You remember those days? Our grandparents, our parents, they were doing anything and everything so that one day they can go to the city and live somewhere in the city. Because they believed that in the city life was easy, there were more opportunities, and maybe you live a better life. You eat pap and boros every day. There were more blessings in the city than in the country. But I think when COVID came, many Adventists remembered this message during the lockdown. During COVID, where I was working in Seychelles Island. It's a small country, it's an island country closer to Mauritius. I was working for the church. I was working at a lifestyle center which was owned by the conference. And when the lockdown came, I also remember this message. Because being an island, they import almost everything that we are eating there. Their main source of food, or I can say what is running the economy there, is tourism. And when there was a lockdown, it means there were no more tourists coming on the island. No tomato, no potato, no rice. I remember they were paying us salaries even though we were on lockdown. You get your salary, you go to the supermarket, no rice, no potato, no this, nothing. You have money, but you can't buy anything in the supermarket. And that's how I realized how useless these papers are. And then we were supported by some old folks on the island who were growing their own pumpkins, growing their own cassava, and then they would share it with us because there was nothing in the supermarket. And I realized this is dangerous. This thing of depending on money to buy anything you need is dangerous. Because now you have cash, you have money in your bank, but you go to the supermarket is empty. And the churches, all the churches on the island were on lockdown. So for 6 months, if I remember, we never went to church. We were worshiping from home. But and pastors were not allowed to go to church. The lifestyle center where I was working, it was connected to the church. Yes.
Dr. Gandy, can you please come closer?
Closer.
Yeah, there are some noises.
Oh, okay. So the lifestyle center where I was working, it was connected to the church. So they said this is the church, and that building is the lifestyle center. And it was the only place that the government allowed that we can make it open because they say it is essential service. And that was also the time I saw the power of medical missionary work. So you can imagine the same premises, the pastor was not allowed, but I was allowed to go and work. Because I was doing medical missionary work. They said, no medical missionary work because they're helping people with diabetes, high blood pressure. We are doing essential service. So they gave me a letter from the police that I was using to go to work and come back. Because there were soldiers everywhere, roadblocks, checking. So you need to have a permit that you are doing essential service and you are allowed to go to work. So for 6 months I was working at the lifestyle center, but the pastor was not allowed to preach at the same place. I remembered what Sister White said, that soon there will come a time when there will be no any other work to be done in missionary lines but medical missionary work. But it was also during this period of lockdowns that many Adventists all over the world remembered this message of Sister White. Get out of the cities as soon as possible. As God opened the door for you, make your way out. I didn't say you should just, pack your bags today and start going into any jungle. But as the Lord opened the door for you, for your family, start moving towards that direction. Now, country living, why country living? Before I take you to the next slide where I'm going to share some deep thoughts. The first thing I want you to know and even remember that country living is not for the end time. Country living is not because the world is coming to an end. It is God's original plan. Remember, Adam and Eve were living in the country, in the garden. Abraham was called to live in the countryside. And Moses, when God was preparing him to do that work of leading the children of Israel, he had to get out of Egypt to the Midian, to the countryside for 40 years, training him in the country so that he can do what the Lord wanted him to do, leading the children of Israel to the promised land. So it's not, yes, we are at the end of time, that is very true. But we are not moving to the country because we are living at the time of the end. Because even Sister White lived in the country. And you find that during the time of our pioneers, all our institutions, our church institutions, they were constructed only in country places. You go to Zimbabwe, you find the Solusi Bluayo is right in the jungle. And you go to Malawi, you find the Adventist high schools, they are all in the countryside. That were built during the time of our pioneers 100 years ago. All the Adventist colleges, they are in the countryside. And you see the same thing every country you go, because our pioneers believed our institutions must be in the countryside. So it had nothing to do with the end of time. And country life is a life that you have to enjoy and live, even if it means you're going to be there for 50 years. It's not like, oh, I'm here because the world is ending next year. Now, when you've been there for 7 years, you wonder, wow, I've wasted a lot of time. I would have been in Joburg this past 7 years. But it's not for the end time. And the other thing that we need to remember also about country living, that country living is not a retirement village. It's not like, okay, now I'm still young, let me work, in Pretoria, but when I am 69 and a half, now I can go to the country when you don't even have the energy to do anything. When you can't even dig, you can't even do anything, and you say, now I'm going to retire in the country. It's not a retirement village. In fact, when you read Adventist promises, Sister White says, parents with young children. It is actually the best place for raising young children. Meaning that if you have children, you need to consider, especially if your children are very young, then you need to consider country living very seriously, because it is actually for them. It is actually, as you are going to see in our lesson as we go. And then the other thing is, to remember about country living is that, country living it is meant to really to be a blessing to God's children. And I was reading in the Review and Heralds when during the time of our pioneers, the reason why Ellen White wrote a message, a mission to the cities. You have read those quotations, isn't it? She said, it was saying that it was because at that time, pastors were refusing to work in the cities. So if a pastor is transferred to the city, they were saying, no, I can't go to the city, I want to live where? In the country. Now it's the opposite today. Today it's considered a promotion when a pastor is, transferred to the city, isn't it? If they leave the rural area and they say, oh, now you're going to be, a pastor, somewhere in Randburg, somewhere. It's like a promotion. But the pioneers were actually refusing to pastor churches in the cities because they considered that it's not a safe place for their families to live in order to prepare for heaven. So, why country living? Why should we go to the country if it is not for the end time and if it's not a hiding place? And that's another thing we need to remember. Country living is not a hiding place. You are not going there to hide from the world. And I don't even think today there is a place where you can hide. Is it possible? With today's technology, I don't think it is possible. I remember the other day I went to the city. I wanted to install internet at my bush home. I'm in the mountains, in the jungle. My house is like, I don't know how I can explain it, in the middle of the forest, but on the mountain. So when I went to these network companies, and I told them I need internet service, your internet service in the jungle, something that is strong, that has stronger signal. And he asked me, where do you live? And I mentioned the name of the place. So he went on his computer, and then he turned the screen to me. He said, is this your house?
Yes.
I was like, so my house can easily be discovered like that, which means there's no place to what? To hide. Even a Vodacom person can see your house. And I saw the picture of my house in the jungle. And the next day I saw the guy coming driving to my home to install the internet. So it means today there's no place you can say I'm hiding here. It's not really a hiding place at all. And the purpose of going there is not to hide. In fact, some people, they also confuse the prophecy of moving to the country with the prophecy when we are going to leave our homes to hide in the mountains during the greater time of trouble, the time of the greater time of trouble. A time will come that even in those country places where we are living now, we are going to run away from them. And that's another different prophecy. It's different with the calling to move to the country now. You don't go to the country during the time of trouble, because some people, they say, okay, country living is, we'll go there when the Sunday law what? Comes. Country living, we are going there to prepare ourselves spiritually before the Sunday law. And during the time of trouble, the most of you know that there are a number of stages of the time of trouble. Some they say there are 3, some they say there are 4 stages. But it will come to a point where we are also going to run away from our country, what? Homes. And we'll go and hide in the caves. And that place, it's God who is preparing it. That is not the place that we are now called to prepare. Because that's where the angels are going to feed us. That's where great controversy, when you read the chapter, the time of trouble, that's why they say, your bread and water will be what? Will be sure. In the country, you have to grow your own bananas. You are not going there reading great controversy from morning until sunset, and expecting to have mangoes, and expecting to have potatoes. In the country, you have to work, and you have to harvest. But during that time when we are going to move to the mountains, angels will be feeding us. Now that is during the time of the greater time of trouble, when the people will be hunting us, even in our country homes. So that is not the time for country living. That is the time when God's people will be delivered. And some people, they confuse these two prophecies, thinking that, the reason why we are going to the country is because the Sunday law is coming. Whether Sunday law is coming this year or 2045, country living is a blessing to us. It says, as soon as possible, get out of what? Get out of the cities. Meaning that don't try to look for excuses why you need to linger longer in the cities. Remember Lot's wife. She lost all her daughters in Sodom, her children, except two, because she delayed. She was lingering about it. So don't come up with excuses, oh, but I must finish this, I must finish that, and I must finish that. When you do that, the devil will make sure you have so much to do in the city so that it doesn't get done. I remember Pastor Conrad Vine was saying the other day that if you want to solve all your problems before you can move, the devil will make sure the problems are always there. He said you must take a step of faith and God will solve your problems. You just move on and see God fighting for you. But if you say, I understand this, but I must first clear that, then I'll make my step. The devil will make sure those things are never cleared. So when you try to clear this, then the currency is going down. Then it's another crisis, then it's another crisis. So, why a country living? If the why is big, the how is easy. This is a point that I want you to remember. For you to make a step into the country, you need to have a big why. Because if your why is small, you cannot have the courage, to leave the conveniences of the city and consider, moving in the bush like this place, very far from shopping malls, very far from anything that is convenient and that makes life a bit comfortable. So one has to have a big why, and when the why is big, the how is easy. Because I've heard so many people ask me so many questions. So if you go to the country, what about this and what about that and what about that? But the truth is, it's not about all those things. The truth is, do you have a big why you want to move to the country? When the why is big, the how is easy. And the Bible says, where there is no vision, the people perish. But he that keepeth the law happens in. So when you don't have a vision, if you don't have a big why, for sure, you can move to the country, you're just moved by emotions because you are watching a YouTube ceremony, someone was talking about country living in a very powerful way, and you pack your bag and you go, in 2 weeks you come back. Because the question you're going to ask yourself, why am I suffering here? You are going to remember, Egypt, the watermelons of Egypt, and all those, the garlic and the onions, and they say, no, I'm going back to Jordan. Life was easy there. I could get anything I wanted just across the street. Why am I struggling here? I even have qualifications to get a better job. Why am I battling with the insects here? Because that's what happens. When you leave the city, you go and you live in the garden, you have to fight with the microscopic organisms, that are eating your plants, this and that, invisible enemies. So why am I suffering when I can live a better life? So defining your big why, it's actually the starting point before you move to the country. And that big why must be strong enough to make you start moving. It must put you in that gear where you have no any other choice but to take off. I was watching a documentary of how these Boeings, these aircrafts, how they take off. Was for a long time I was not interested as long as I get where I was going. So one day I was watching it, they were saying that, when that Boeing is about to take off and it is cruising on the ground, they put it in a V1 gear. So when it's in the V1 gear, most of these Boeing 737, they'll be cruising at a speed of almost 270 miles an hour on that ground. And they were saying that when it is in that speed and in V1 gear, it can only do one thing. It can only take off. They cannot even stop it. So even if the pilot discovers that there is a fault somewhere, he will let that aircraft to take off, then he can land again. And thank you so much. So you see, for us to take that move to the country, you need to be in a V1 gear, where you can only do one thing, you can only take off. But for you to take off, you need to find a big why. So let's go to the next slide. This is where I want to share more. And then, you know, the letters are a bit invisible. The big why, I just want to share with you our big why, the reason why we decided to move to the countryside, and what inspired me and my wife to move and to say, yes, it's time to move, it's time we start to pray for this. And even though we lived in the cities from the time we decided to move for another 3 years, but our hearts were already living in the country. We were visualizing the home, we were discussing about, you know, the garden and everything. We were just waiting for God, you know, to open the door for us. So there was one big why. The first why was the character building. When we are looking at homeschooling, when we decided to homeschool our children, and I ordered some material called the More Formula. Some of you know it. It's similar to Sunlight. But this one emphasizes more on the character building, training the head, the hands, and the health. And everything that we are talking in this guide, More Formula, we saw that it's impossible to do it when you are living in the city. Because it was talking about how you train a child with the skills of emotional intelligence. You know, children, it says, you develop their emotions when they are working with their own hands, when they are designing the gardens, when they are, you know, doing crafting, when they are doing so many things, and they are heavily involved in industrial and in creative kind of works. That's how emotions are trained and developed. And when something is broken, they fix it. When something is damaged, they repair it. And they learn from a young age that life is difficult. Life is not easy. They say when children are growing up in the city and you're just buying them everything, toys, this and that, you're just taking them to the shopping mall, you know, feeding them like you're feeding hybrid chickens. They can grow, go to university, become chartered accountants, but they're still thinking like babies. Have you seen that those kind of children? Yes. You know, the way they make choices and decisions in life, it's like they're still kids. And you find that someone is 30 years old, but she's just a super baby, well educated, with degrees, but emotionally they cannot manage life. You cannot even trust them with their own children, because that emotional intelligence is developed when a child is young. When the children are young, More Formula says, don't do anything for a child if the child can do that by themselves if you train them. Meaning that as they are growing up, teach them how to wash their own clothes, to iron their own clothes, to cook some porridge, yes, even to wash dishes. And remember, when they are learning to wash dishes, they may break some of them. It's okay. It's part of learning. Don't say, oh no, I bought these dishes in Dubai, I don't want you to touch them. Allow them to break some, because that's how they learn. When they are learning how to iron their own clothes, they are going to burn a few skates, isn't it? One or two. And that's how they learn that, oh, if you are careless, you can actually burn your beautiful shirt and you lose it. Don't say, no, I don't want you to do ironing because you may end up burning it. Let them burn. When they're learning how to cook rice, the first rice you not eat it will be porridge. Allow them to cook that porridge and let them eat it with spinach. Then that's how they learn. When you're teaching them how to bake bread, the first bread will be charcoal. But that's how they learn. So don't be scared of them making mistakes. It's how you train their emotions, and that's how children learn. But now, the moment you say, you treat your children like as if they're angels. Hello, my angel, can I take your bag? You uplift them, you're scared of them because they're now angels. You don't discipline them. You are not loving them enough. And they need to learn from a very young age. And these are the children who are committing suicide the moment they reach 25. Because when they were young, you deceived them that life is easy. But the truth is life is difficult. And children are supposed to learn that at a very young age. So the homeschool was one of the big why we wanted to move to the country. And we knew that for as long as we have taken the path to homeschool our children, we must start praying and searching for land in the country. And our next big why, of course, we are also looking for, we saw the advantages of a strong emotional bond that is created when families are living together, working together, praying together, and serving together. So that was like a slogan for our family. When I was living in Joburg, imagine we were living in Heidelberg, and every morning I had to go to work to Johannesburg, about 1.5 hours with the morning traffic. So unless I leave home 5 a.m. to beat the traffic, then maybe it will take me 1 hour to get to Joburg, and another 1.5 hours in the evening. I had no choice. The traffic will be there. Everybody is going home. So it will take about 2 hours. You leave work 4:30, you arrive at home 6:30. By the time you get home, you are tired. Everything is short. Even the prayers were short. You want to have a quick devotion, quick everything, eat quickly, and go to bed. And I asked myself, for how long am I going to live like this? Then I really wanted that life where I can live together with my children, work together with them, at the Lifestyle Center, in the garden, and going for outreach together with them. Living together, working together, serving together creates a stronger family bond than anything else. In fact, as we are going to see in some of the lessons that we are going to learn, even in marriages that stay longer and last, it's the marriage where husband and wife are working together. Not a marriage where the husband is going this way in the morning, the wife is going that way, and they meet 9 p.m. and then on a happy Sabbath day. And you're going to understand as you're going to go into the next lesson why that is key and why you must pray for that. That you should get to a point where you are husband and wife and the children actually work together. There's nothing that creates stronger emotional bond like thinking together, planning together, and working together. That is it creates the strongest bond between mother and children, father and children, husband and wife, parents and children. So it's actually a biblical model of a family. As you're going to read, if you read the Old Testament, you find that every family was known by the trade that they're doing. So we are thinking of along those lines of having a biblical model of a family where me, my wife, and my children will be working together every day, not only on Sabbath, because the only time maybe me and my wife will be together for Sabbath, if they invite us to a church, maybe to do a cooking class, that's the only time we will be like we are doing things together. But I was basically alone. And I never enjoyed even the meals that time. I remember my wife would pack me, we are leaving home 5 a.m. She would pack me breakfast, brunch, whatever it is. You get when you're busy, you get home with a container of food. You didn't even eat it. So, yeah, for the first time when I moved to the country, I gained some weight. For one reason, there's too much to eat, and you have time to eat it. So we wanted that kind of thing of working together as a family team, and then we're also thinking of a self-reliance kind of lifestyle where you are, you don't depend on the systems to live. You just trust in divine provision, but you have a place where you don't need to pay rent, you don't need to pay for water, you don't need to pay for electricity, you don't need to be fighting with the landlords, and you are producing much of what you're using. We haven't accomplished 100% of that. I don't know where we are now in percentages, but maybe we have achieved a great deal of it because by God's providence over the years, we have managed to build our humble home, and then we also managed to build a cottage that we are using as a lifestyle center. We needed the lifestyle center for two reasons. One, we wanted to be a living classroom for our children that we are homeschooling, so they can do their practical work as the guests are coming to the center. So I actually told my daughters that, this center that you're building here is not for me, it's for you. You can see I am now old. It is actually your classroom. We are building this center for you. We'll be here, we'll be supporting you, but you need to know that the guests are coming, they are your guests. So they are happy with that, and they are actually the ones who actually manage the center. We just support them as parents. So they take care of the guests, we help them with counseling, they'll cook for them, and they'll do everything for them. They'll teach them cooking classes and the massage, hydrotherapy, whatever it is. But we made it to be part of their curriculum and be part of the home industry for them. And the other thing I think maybe I'll share it in the afternoon, but we were really looking of living that life where we can actually grow our own food. So meaning that we can have homegrown foods, and we have homegrown children, homegrown ministry, and homegrown industries. So this is the desire that we were, dreaming when we were living at Heidelberg, when we were reading books with my wife. Want to have a home where our children will be homegrown, our food will be homegrown, and the industries, the way that we are generating income should also be working from home. And we really didn't know until somebody gave me a book which was talking about, God's plan for the home. The home was not supposed to be a place of where you just eat, watch TV, and sleep. If you look in the biblical times, during those days that they call it whatever lifestyle, you find that a home was dynamic. The home was a school. And the home is where industries were happening. That's where people were generating, the family was generating income. It was at the home where character was taught. It was at the home where ministry and hospitality was done. So discipleship was actually happening from home. And that was another big why. We were also thinking of a home-based ministry. Because if you talk of ministry where you travel, it's not always possible to travel with the family like now. I could not manage to come with my whole family to this camp. So we decided that we need to have a homegrown ministry. And in that homegrown ministry, we came up with three things. And this can only happen when you are living at your own farm. Number one, we decided to come up with a lifestyle center. We call it NLC Wellness Retreat because we're in the mountains, so it's a retreat indeed. It's a place where you cannot even hear the noise of cars passing by unless the vehicle is coming to your home. We are off-grid, surrounded by nature. In the morning, we wake up when the birds are singing. You know, they sing on top of their voices. And we know that, oh, it's morning, we need to wake up. We don't even need to set the alarm because by 5 a.m., 4:30, the birds will be singing loud. It's a quiet place. People, they love it. Most people who come to our place, they love it because we are just surrounded by nature, and 70 kilometers from our home, you see Lake Malawi. It's one of the largest lakes in Africa. It's a beautiful scenario to see. You only appreciate what God has created. So what we decided that, okay, now we are here, what would be our homegrown ministry? Number one, it has to be the wellness center because that's what we know best. That's what we have done for so many years. So it was the easiest to start. And number two, we decided to come up with another idea. We said, let's have agritourism evangelism. So we organize some farm tours where people can come to a farm, but as they come, as we show them how to make compost, how to make organic pesticides, how to do this, how to do that, we blend that with the gospel, the three angels message. So that was another thing that we decided to do. So we created that campsite, and we created this agritourism concept. So my second born daughter, she's now the project manager of that. While my first born, she's the manager of the wellness center. So I decided that they should own those industries. And we as parents, we just support them. And I've discovered that when you allow your children to own the industry, they mature much faster. They become more responsible, and they are always creative, coming up with better ideas more than me. Like my second born daughter, she told me that she had decided to come up with the Nehemiah model for the agritourism. Now Nehemiah, what did he do? He had a burden to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. And then he prayed, and then he came up with a system of building the walls of Jerusalem in 52 days. And then he glorified God at the end. So she created the tour using the Nehemiah model of proclaiming the everlasting gospel. And one day maybe you come, and you may also be a farm tour guest who will take you around. But it's not just the agritourism and another agritourism or another farm tour where people just come there and drink some organic wine, and have some braai and this and that. We actually call it wellness farm tour. So I've added the name wellness, so people, they associate it with healthful living. But the whole idea of this is actually to teach them the everlasting gospel, the three angels message, so that we can turn this farm into we have decided to turn the farm into a pulpit where the gospel is actually preached. So this is what we call homegrown ministry. Without traveling anywhere, we are actually getting people there, because where we stay also, because we are closer to the lake, it's also a place where most of the tourists actually come. So we said, I think God has placed us in this place for this purpose. So we can actually proclaim the everlasting gospel, to every, time, to all people, right here at our farm, without having to travel anywhere. If we are called to go anywhere, we go. But we know we have the ministry at home. So the other thing that we also decided to do, we discovered that in the community, surrounding us, it's a poor village. And they may not come as tourists to our farm. They may not come for the farm tour like the people in the city can do. But we decided that we should also have some outreach programs, community program for them. We invite them to come to our farm. So we teach them how to make therapeutic meals, and then we also teach them how to grow their own food. And this is a group that my girls, they call it Bright Lights. They invite young girls between the age of 10 and 25, and they teach them different skills and doing Bible studies with them right at the farm. So that was another big why. We wanted to have a home-based ministry because, for example, even when I was in the Seychelles Island, it was basically me who was going to this church, wellness center, because the conference employed me, but my family and my wife, they were at home. They were not really involved in the ministry that I was doing there. They were just doing homeschooling at home. I go to work, I come back. I go to work, I come back. The only time maybe my family will accompany me is when maybe I'm preaching at another church somewhere. Then we go together as a family. That's the only time we'll be together as a family. So life has never been beautiful, honestly speaking. Even in terms of family life, we have never been happy like now when you work together, live together, pray together, eat together, and save together. Those five togetherness, they make your family life amazing. And that's what makes your home a little heaven on earth. But if you are just visiting one another at home, if you are just sharing a house, and everybody is living his own life, you know what I'm talking about. You just pretend to be happy on Facebook, on status, and yet right deep inside your heart, you know that there's no happiness at home. And I've observed that many people who post happiness on status, they are not actually happy. People are genuinely happy, they don't even bother posting it because it's already there. But you want to fake it until you make it. And in most cases, if you have taken the wrong direction, you will not even make it. So those are the big whys we had, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, when we were living in Heidelberg, praying for country living, we wanted to live that life. By God's providence and by God's grace, God has made it to become a reality. But it was one step at a time. Until with time, we are now living what we prayed for. And we always thank God that, there are people who dream, who pray for something, and sometimes they just die before it comes to pass. But God has allowed us to plant our fruits and we are able to eat them. We planted most of our trees in 2021, and some of them, they take 4 years to fruition. Now we're eating our guavas, our strawberries, our pineapples, pomegranates, apples, papayas, grapes, and a sour soup. We have about 40 different fruits in the garden. And the mangoes, different types of mangoes, a variety, different types of bananas. we can now enjoy a happy birthday breakfast party with the fruits from our garden. We actually call our meals from garden to table. Even at our farm tour, we call it from garden to table because we are able to serve a delicious meal of plantains and the sweet potato and yam, everything from our garden, maybe except the salt and the olive oil and the cuckoo, whatever oil. Which at the moment we planted the coconut trees, but they haven't yet started giving us fruit because they take a little bit longer. But we do have the coconut trees there. of which we hope in the future may be able to make our own coconut milk from whatever we have. And we have discovered also that working together as a family, as a team, it has, it is giving us a lot of opportunity for innovation. My daughters have now discovered, that when the Ukraine war started, we found that it was difficult to find wheat in Malawi. We didn't know wheat was coming from Ukraine until the war started. So now we couldn't get whole wheat flour anymore, we couldn't even get white flour anymore. And they started playing with the cassava flour tapioca. And they baked muffins, they made pizza, they made bread, and I'm like, so why are we worried about Ukraine? Let the war continue there. We have cassava here. Because we have plenty of cassava. So they created so many things. They even make samosas and chapati from cassava flour. And it's so delicious and so amazing. So a lot of things have been innovated, and that's actually the beauty of the homeschool. And the other thing that we wanted, why it was key for us to go to the country, it was because we discovered that homeschool at high school level, you must focus on industries. And we could not do that when I was in Joburg and I had to work in order to pay the landlord, to pay water, to pay for this and to pay for that. There's no way I could also have time to start a trade with my children. It only became easy in the country where we don't pay rent, we are not paying anyone, to say, okay, my children, what can we do? And they'll come up with so many ideas of what kind of interest you can do. Because the reason why children get frustrated with homeschool when they get to high school level, they are worried much about their future. What will I do? Yes, I'm reading about Moses and Abraham and Jacob from this sunlight, but what next? My friends are going to Bates, my friends are going to UCT, my friends are there, my friends are, where am I going with this homeschool? Because when you read more formula, it says that by the time a child is 19, 20 years old, doing true education, home education, by that age they must have a trade that they can survive on their own. They must not be asking a question, what will I do? The moment they're asking that question, you are doing forced education at home. By the time they hit 20, they must know who they are. And they must know, this is what I am good at, and this is what I can get paid for. And more formula says you start teaching a child a trade from the age of 6 years old. They need to know how, you need to teach them the trade. And the best trade is the skills that you as a parent have, or the skills that you may learn together with your children. So by the time they reach 20, whether it's construction, they're very good with construction, that they can live on construction. Not just doing something very simple, whether it's cooking, they're really chefs, they're very good at it, that they can earn a living on that. And this should be the major focus of homeschool at the teenage level. You are preparing them from adulthood. So they need to how to master a trade, and they need to be grounded in mission. These are the two keys in more formula when you are teaching a child from the age 13. The focus is no longer on reading and writing, because the assumption that they've already done that. The focus is now on a trade. And why trade? In our time, if you are living on this planet, I'm sure you have observed how degrees are devaluating. People are going to school getting degrees, but they can't get a job. Yeah. Is it happening in South Africa? Or it's only in Malawi? In Malawi, It's now a mess because the country is producing more degrees more than they are producing jobs. So all the children are getting degrees from universities, private universities. And I remember one day I had a friend of mine. He's a lecturer at the University of Agriculture. So I was joking with him in a mocking way that, look, I live in the farm. I'm doing real agriculture there, practical agriculture. You are teaching agriculture to your students, but when they graduate, they work for World Vision, distributing soya. So some of them, they're working for UN, but I'm doing the real agriculture. And he said to me, better those who say they're working for World Vision or whatever. But what makes me sad as a lecturer, sometimes I go to the filling station to put petrol in my car. And you find that the petrol attendant, she's a girl, my graduate, someone who was my student. Because they can't get a job, they end up becoming petrol attendants after spending for a good 3-4 years at university to get a degree in agriculture. And I met a man, one day I was teaching true education class in Rwanda. And then there was an old man who was sitting at the back. After I finished teaching, he never commented anything. But the next day he came with a book. He said, Brother Gandy, after listening to your lesson yesterday, I've decided to give you this book. And that book was actually, that was 2022. It was saying that by 2027, most of the jobs are going to disappear because of technology. The bank tellers, they may disappear once we shift to digital currency. And the list was long. And he was saying me, this guy used to work as a minister of education for the government in Rwanda. And he also worked for UNICEF before he worked as a minister for education in Rwanda. He's an Adventist, but now he's retired. And he said universities are teaching careers whose jobs don't exist. The jobs that these universities, the career that these universities are teaching, the jobs don't exist. And the person who wrote that book is not an Adventist, or he was not like a true education fanatic. He was just someone who was analyzing how the world is moving today. And he said the people who are going to be successful in the future are those who are running their own trade, they are innovative, and they are providing solutions. So there are people who are creative and they are providing solutions to the problems that people are facing out there. They are the people who are going to find something to do. But people who say, I want to have a degree in climate change specializing in thunder. You come from college with your thunder degree, no one can employ you. No one can employ you. So, and it's happening all over the world. This is why, people, they talk about jobs, but this is not the time for you to think of a job. Think of becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Don't think of climbing the ladder. Think of owning the ladder. And this is what true education is all about. So these are two different paths. When you are doing true education at home, you are not preparing a child to be employed. You are preparing him to be an employer.
Yeah.
To be someone who will own the industry, and he or she will be someone who will be employing people. So you are not worried about what kind of a job is she going to have. You are giving her the skills to have a trade so that she will be the one, or he will be the one employing the people.
Yeah.
They are not ladder climbers, they are ladder owners.
Yeah.
As the Bible says, we shall be the head. and not the tail. So true education is about making you the head. The people who are at the tail, they are the ones who are fighting for jobs. Because what is a job? It's about being a slave. You are just a legal slave, like Dube said many years ago. You remember that song? You are a legal slave. So you are just becoming a legal slave. You are employed, you are getting some peanuts, some crumbs. So you must be the hammer, not the nail. Because a nail, no matter how beautiful it can be, it's still a nail. It will be hammered. But the true education equips you to be the hammer, not the nail. So you become the one making the decisions, not some people deciding for you. And that's how you are able to keep the Sabbath holy. Because no one is going to tell you you have to knock off at 5 o'clock on Friday. You can decide to knock off 12 o'clock on Friday because it's your own industry. That's what we do at our home. Friday is a preparation day. We run our trade mostly from Sunday to Thursday. Friday we do the simple things, and by noon we start preparing for Sabbath. We are able to do that because it's our own industry. When I was working in Joburg, I was always getting home during the Sabbath hours. You know, you knock off at 4:30, you hit the freeway, and by the time you get home, it's Sabbath to 7, 6:30 to 7. And you say, I'm opening the Sabbath. The Sabbath was opening while you're on the way home. So when you are running your own home trade, you are in control of your time. And this is actually the beauty of true education. So when you're in a true education, don't be intimidated by the question, oh, so what will you do in the future? Who will employ you? All you need is to have a trade. But we are going to learn more about that in the next lesson. For now, I want to stop there and hear your comments so that I can also learn from you. What are your comments?
I've got 2 questions.
Yes.
I want to know, how did you convince? In fact, did they attend any worldly school, your children?
They can call it worldly, but it was David, it was Adventist. But I think it's a worldly school with Adventist name.
Okay.
Because I went to Adventist schools myself, and my dad also went to Adventist schools. But you know that the church schools have been changing over the years. When my dad used to tell me the stories of what was happening during his time, you could see that there was true education there. Because they're learning, you know, wiring, plumbing, and carpentry, and everything during the time of my dad in the early 1970s. And I went to the same school in the 1990s. We just found a museum of that. We could see that, okay, they used to do carpentry here, they used to do welding here, they used to do that there. But during our time, it was just academic. At least there was no sports. There are still some principles that they are still, you know, hanging on. Like we had a garden, so we never used to go to do sports, but we would go to the garden. Some of the vegetables that we are eating at the campus, we used to grow ourselves as students, and we had also, I think, some fruit trees. But now you go to the same campus, you have a basketball ring, and you have got, you know, netball this and that. It is just like any other school. So yes, they did, but that was in the very early stages. I think it's grade 1, grade 2. But from then we took them out of school because we didn't like what was happening at the school, and we couldn't find any other school but to teach them at home.
So I just wanted to know, how did you handle that? Because they were used to go to
campus.
Yes, now they are alone at home. Did
That's a very
that
good question.
cause any conflict between them?
Well, I don't know how other parents have experienced it. Our children are still young then. And what we observe, when children are young, they love to do with their parents. It is actually us who push them to the school. That's why I find some kids will be crying the first day you're taking them to school. Because the natural instinct of the child is to be with the mother and to be with the father. We never actually fought with them. They were actually happy, that they have to be learning from home. So it became a joy. But I know if you delay, like when they become teenagers, then you have to convince them, or they have to be impressed by themselves. Some of them, there's a personal conviction that makes them to say, oh, I think I need to take the other path. But really, children naturally are designed to learn from the parents. Yes, another comment?
It's not a comment. So it's more like I'm trying to get some ideas. So there's a space, but there's no money or resources to begin whatever that you want to start. Start what you want to understand. So I don't know if maybe there can be some maybe ideas on how to approach that or to solve that problem if you don't have any source of income to even begin to start.
Maybe to purchase a piece of land. Maybe even to buy a piece of land.
You do have a piece of land, but you don't have any means to start. Yes.
That's a very good question. The transition from city to country differ from one person to another. There's no formula that you can say this is how to move. Because I have seen people who have a home in the city. Maybe they've paid the bond for so many years. They're just remaining with a few thousands to pay. They sell the property at a profit, and they take the same amount of money to buy a property in the country and maybe remain in the change. But if someone who has been working for maybe more than 20 years, someone just came from college 2 years ago, and maybe they've never worked for so long, they don't have much savings, but they need to move to the country. The approach may be different. However, it doesn't matter where you are in the stage of life. The truth is, setting up a country home, you need to have some resources, not at once, but the way of earning income. Now, from my experience, I've observed that yes, we are talking about industries yesterday, growing ginger, but even for you to grow that ginger, you need to have a little bit of capital to do that. So the best thing that some people can do, or some people do, start with what you already know. The skills that you already have. Don't just dump everything that you are doing because you are moving to the country. Because you may be dumping what could have helped you to build that country home. Well, there are some people, they get a piece of land today and tomorrow they resign from their job. But maybe they needed that salary to grow the ginger, so that the ginger can give them money to plant the orchard, and then they grow like that. Because for some people, a salary can be what they may use to start developing their country home. For some people, it may even require them maybe even to get a job closer while they're living on the farm. So that they get a job and they do that. Some people have got skills. carpentry, mechanics. They're teaching. Some of you can cook. And even cooking, if you can monetize it, it can generate some income. The other time I was talking to my wife, my wife, she's gifted, very gifted in cooking. But she was just cooking for the church. Nothing wrong with that. She would do cooking class at that church and then that church and that church and that church and that church. And one day I told her that, this cooking ministry is a beautiful one, but you can also use it as a way of generating income. So we advertised it, and one day she was asked by some of the bank in Malawi that she would go and train their chefs how to prepare healthy meals for their staff in all their lodges. She did that, they paid her enough money, and that's the money we used to buy our 10 hectares of land. It was through the cooking class that my wife was doing, but she has never gone to any school of cooking. She's just gifted, just like the men of God here. She'll be there, she'll try this, she'll try that, she'll try this, she'll try that. And she was able to train, professional chefs on how to make it a meal and generate enough income to buy a piece of land. So you can use the skills that you already have. Some of you know how to sing music. I met a guy in Botswana. He simply, when he discovered that, I don't have money to build my country home, but I know how to sing, I know how to play music instruments. He just opened a music school. And the people registering, the children are registering, teaching them how to play the guitar, the piano, this and that, this and that. And it became a sort of income to the point that he was able now to start developing his farm. He bought a greenhouse and started growing this and growing that. So start with what you already have. Don't just think that all you need is some money to fall from heaven and then you start a farm. God can actually multiply what you already have. Some of you are good with crafting. Some of you are good with sewing. Sewing before it was like a job of the poor people. But I've seen today, because of these fashions, people, they want to have a new dress at every wedding. I've seen even some young graduates in Malawi, some girls, they have got degrees. But they're not working in the office, they're busy sewing because they're making a lot of money. Every singing group, they want to have a new uniform. Every wedding, every bridal shower, the women want to have something new. And they discover that the sewing machine is making more money than the office. So you can see that you can use what you already have to develop the land. So the first question that you should ask yourself is, what am I good at? What kind of things I'm already good at that if I do them, I can get a market and get paid for that? And you can start from there. But really there's no exact formula that you can say this is a path. Because it differs from one person to another. So for some people, I also met a young lady, she's a web designer. She's married, they're living in the country. She just started this online business of designing websites for people and getting paid while living in the country. I met another family, the guy is a chartered accountant. He opened a business of helping, these small business people, managing their books, this and that, while living in the country. So he's not getting the same amount of money that the corporate was giving him, but he's getting enough to develop his fund, to sustain himself. So you can always use the skills that you have to start developing the fund. What you need is to start. And that other thing is the powerful principle is to start small. Because sometimes we fail to start because we think we must start with 1 hectare. But you can start small. And if the best way, the beautiful way of starting small is to start with spices. Because spices, just a piece of land like the half here, you can actually generate enough income to take you to the next stage. But if you grow ginger or turmeric, just this space of the car park, it will give you enough income to move to the next stage. So start with the high value crops like spices. That will not take 5 years, but in less than one year you can harvest and sell. And they also don't, most of them, they don't need fertilizer. They don't need so much farm input. You can just put what we call biochar. You carbonize some, in Malawi we use rice husk, but maybe you can use whatever it is. Just boosting the fertility of the soil. And you can plant these things without the need of putting all these other chemicals, harvest and you sell. So I think there's just a lot that you can actually do. Some people have saw it in another lady who was making healthy dishes and delivered the meals, into the offices. Like healthy lunch. So she prepared the healthy lunch. There's one lady in Malawi, she does that. She's having a country home. And she's also good with cooking. So how she has developed her country home, she started a catering service. For people who want to eat healthy. She'll make lunches for them and deliver them in their offices. And every month she's earning something. And now she's got about 300 apple trees that she's eating from. So it was a humble beginning. So don't despise the humble beginnings. You start simple and start with what you have, with whom you have. And as soon as you can, you go and stay there. Because you cannot develop a country home by remote control. Unless you want people to have a feast of your money. You can employ people just be getting your salary for free. But you need to be there, you need to monitor what is going on. So as soon as it is practical to do so, move and grow there. For some people, it may be necessary for them to, maybe at the beginning stages, to continue generating income somewhere while they are working on the land. For some people. While for others, it can be practical just to move and operate from there, depending on what you're doing. Some people, their job doesn't require them to go anywhere. They can work from home. So, like the engineers who do designing, this and that, all they need is a laptop and a network. And I have friends in Malawi who are in the country, they are engineers. They do consult for companies from home while living in the country. So it will differ really from one person to another. But as soon as God has opened the way for you, make a move and start doing something on the land. Make one step at a time, one brick at a time. That's how you build the walls of Jerusalem. Another comment. You have 15 minutes to break time. Now my question, what is your big why? Because yesterday I was asking how many of you have found a place and you are praying to go there, and almost everybody said you are going there, you are on your way, or you have found the piece of land, or you are praying for it. So I want to hear from you, what is your big why? Anyone who is willing to share your big why. Why is going to move to the country soon?
For us, we want to move to the country for to make sure that we have we supply for our own food, and also for character building. Yes, those are our big ones.
That is very true. I'm sure like this morning I was traumatized when I went to the shop, right? Because I left South Africa 8 years ago. And they find what was 5 rand, now it's 40 rands. Am I dreaming? And how are the people surviving here? You find the jungle oats were buying like 9 rand, now it's like, I don't know. It's now food for the rich. But in those days, the jungle oats was like food for the poor. You know, those who can't afford granola and the muesli, they are the ones who are buying jungle oats. But now jungle oats is becoming food for the rich. I could not believe it. Bread, 22 rands. I was buying it 2 rands. And I wondered what has happened to it, you know. So I'm still in a shock up to now. Because I wonder if I can buy anything in the shop right now, because everything is just traumatizing me. You know, you look at the price of the Madzalo, my favorite Madzalo, the one that I was buying for pap. We used to buy 10 kgs, 18 rands. Now 100 and something. What? In those days, if somebody gave you 100 rand, it means that was a big donation. It was actually the amount of money that will take you a long way. You could buy the Madzalo 10 kg cooking oil and almost some basics that can sustain you for some days. But now I was like, even 1,000 rand is nothing. So I don't know how people are surviving, and what you're saying is true unless we start growing our own food. And it's not only here, even in Malawi the same thing has happened. Things have gone up 10 times, 15 times. I was saying to my children the other day that if we never took this challenge to grow our own papaya, our own grapes, I don't think we would be eating fruits today. And many people in the city, they actually stopped eating fruits. Because they're just buying the very, very basic things. You know, they just need to eat pap and the vegetables. You know, eating a fruit has become a luxury. A serious luxury, because fruits are now more expensive than the junk food. So yeah, that's a good big why. Another one, what is a big why?
It's more like my sister has said, when you look and you realize these bodies are the temple, and you are not sure what you put in your body when you buy, even if it is we are not sure what chemicals, I'll just give you an example of green pepper. If you buy a green pepper, it's so huge like this. But if you grow a green pepper, it's not that huge. So you wonder what is going on in that green pepper that you're buying.
I saw a cabbage today like this. You have to hug the cabbage. We used to carry it like this, now you have to hug it.
Yes. You wonder. And then like the pastor said the other day, then you pray for that food, but you know that it's
Nothing.
not the right food.
That's very true. That is very true. So growing our own food, you know that you're eating healthy. You know there are no chemicals. Like, I used to fear to make vegetable juices for our patients at the center using vegetables from the market. Because you end up giving them a concentrate of chemicals. You see? But when we are growing our, like at home, we are growing our own curry, our own amaranth, our own blackjack. We are happy to give our cancer patients, vegetable juices because we know they're chemical free, they are organic, and you can even see the impact of that. So, growing your own food is one of the most basic things that you should do, even if you may not be a commercial farmer. That's a very important point. Not everybody can use farming as a trade. Some of you may have other trades. You may live in the country, but you may have a different trade altogether. You may be doing carpentry, you may be doing other things. But growing your own food is something basic. Remember, growing your own food and growing food as a trade are two different ones. Commercial farming, that's what we were saying yesterday, you can actually select only one crop as a source of income that you can focus on. Like as I was sharing you stories of people in East Africa, they'll have, 5,000 avocado trees. But that's not the only thing that they're having in their farms. They're growing watermelons, butternuts, pumpkins. But these other things, they're just growing them for food security, for them to have food at home. But the avocados is for income, for them now to generate income for ministry, for their day-to-day living, and for things like that. So these are two different things. Growing your own food is basic. But commercial farming is optional. Some people, they may not even decide to do commercial farming. They may have a different industry altogether, as we are going to share this afternoon. Yes, another big why. Anyone is a big why?
Yes, because in the cities there's violence everywhere. And there's violence, there's drugs, vaping, alcohol, smoking. That's why I want to live in the country. It's peaceful. There's no noise, there's no truck, there's no cars. It's just peaceful. The birds are chirping. The sun is shining. That's my reason.
Yeah, that is the big why. I said in the cities, there's a lot of crime, which is very true. And in any country, yes, the crime may differ here and there, but every country you go, there's more crime in the cities and there's less crime in the countryside. And in the place where we are, if you come to our place and you come to where we live in the countryside, you may actually think that Malawi is paradise, because we are simply living in the outskirts where crime does not exist. You don't even need to have the security there. You can actually sleep under a mango tree and you wake up in the morning. The time we were constructing our house, there was a time we never had windows, but we are sleeping there. And then we end up putting the windows and putting this and putting that. But that's not the normal life in Malawi. If you are living in the cities, you have some experience with the crime, with the thieves, with the this and that. Even if people try to grow their own food in the cities, they wake up in the morning, they find people have harvested everything. They watch you planting, they watch you, taking care of it, and they're just watching. And the next morning you wake up, they have harvested everything. But where we live in the countryside, there's nothing like that. You can leave your home and go somewhere for a holiday. You come back, you find everything is there, without security, without anything. So there's also that blessing. And sometimes visitors, when they come, especially our guests who come to the wellness center, when they see the natural policies, and they say, "Is this place safe?" And it's coming from the city. Because they are used to live in dangerous places. And they cannot believe, the tranquility and the peace and the calmness that is there. So, yes, that's another big why. Okay, the last big why before we pray. Why you want to move to the country? What is your big why? The preparation and the character building. Those also, I think, a very powerful big why, because indeed we are going to that time, and the time is already here. That cost of living is becoming expensive in the cities. And we also know that the time is coming and we may not even be able to buy or sell. So when you can live on the land, produce your own food, and you grow your own medicines and all those things, I'm sure it's also wisdom, because it was never raining when Noah was building an ark. So I think let's stop there for now. You may keep on meditating on this lesson. And if you never discovered your big why, please do. Because if you don't have the big why, the how will be difficult. But when the why is big, the how is easy. Amen.